The second season of The Rings of Power has finally ended. The season finale was this week, and I have the opportunity to watch it over the weekend. And I have a lot to share about it. There are good things that I like about this show so far, this second season in particular. And there are a lot of things that I was disappointed with. And there are a lot of questions still lingering in the air for me about this series as a whole. So in this video, I want to break it down, good and bad. Let's start at the beginning first. This series is not a sequel to the Lord of the Rings or the Hobbit trilogies. That was stated from the beginning, has no connection with Peter Jackson, even though Peter Jackson at first was supposed to be an advisor. Ultimately, the state of Tolkien decided not to have him being part of. Even though Peter Jackson did a fantastic job with his trilogy and his films, he also took a lot of liberties when he was writing or he was creating and producing the films. There are a lot of things in the film that are not necessarily part of the book. There are a lot of things that were changed, even some behaviors, some characters, some story elements were changed, some characters were taken out. So there are a lot of things. At the end of the day, it's an adaptation. This series is trying to build this concept. They only have the rights for The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings. They don't have the rights for the Silmarillion. They don't have the rights for Unfinished Tales and everything else that was created in the aftermath. So they are trying to put things together, but at the same time, they have to respect the books and the stories. And they're also kind of filling the gaps. And I think that is the great thing about this show in the end, that there's a lot of things, a lot of unfinished things, a lot of parts and elements from the entirety of the Tolkien universe are taking into consideration to create the story here. And of course, some people are going to like it, some people are going to dislike it, and that has to do pretty much with your expertise in the matter. Now, those familiar with the books and also familiar with the films, they know that this is thousands of years prior to them, prior to the events of the Third Age. This is the Second Age. So a lot of the characters that we see here are characters that are going to be represented down the line that you'll see in the films, in the Hobbit trilogy, but also in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. So there are characters here that are really setting the foundation. They're the young versions of them. Also, there are characters that were mentioned in those films, but they were not part of it. This is the rise of Dark Lord Sauron. So this is technically what they're doing here. They're presenting how the conflict started, how the rings were created, and how he was able to engulf all these groups into this war. You know, Sauron is able to manipulate his way through to become who he is. And of course, we see that later down the movies. In many ways, even though there's no direct connection with Peter Jackson films, it is in so many ways a prequel to those events, and it's a prequel to The Hobbit. Some people are gonna have differences of opinion in reference of the behavior, the actions, how they behave when they're young, and all of a sudden as they gotten older. Galadriel, she's more hot-headed, ready to battle, and she's the focal point in many aspects of this series. You also have Elrond, played by Robert Armayo, and I think I had no issue with them. I like the character. I think the whole cast is an international cast. They're all doing fantastic in their position, in their portrayals. Now, an actor that I really have great respect this season, in this show, that did a fantastic job is Charles Edwards, who portrays Celebrimbor, the greatest of the Elven Smiths. He is the one who forges the Rings of Power. His dialogue with Sauron, with Charlie Bickers, who also does a fantastic job as Sauron. Of course, in the first season, he was Halbrand. That was his disguise to men, a human disguise. And also, he's disguised now as Anatar, the Lord of Gifts, and to the elves. And he's able to pretty much to lie and manipulate Celebrimbor to produce those rings, but also everyone in between, every person that he touches. I like their dialogues. I love when they're having bring this conversations. I think that's the focal point of this season. And in reality, it's about creating those rings, which are important for the whole series, you know, for the Lord of the Rings. That's the name of it. And not only that, it really, you can see the shadowing images to what the future will be down the road for Sauron. Not only that, is even at the end of the season finale, I think that was the best part. I think that was the best last conversation they had when actually, and I'm gonna give some spoilers here, when Celebrimbor is killed by Sauron. She's technically prophesying what would be the demise of Sauron. I think that is a great element. It really set the stage. It becomes a very emotional moment, but I think it's the best part of the show. I will tell you, there were a lot of parts in this show. There was a lot of conversations, a lot of dialogues that I wasn't crazy about, because it felt that there was so many characters. Of course, there's so many characters here, and there's so much stuff happening at the same time, so many different lines and threads of stories. Of course, you know, they trying to cram as much as they can, because if you have read the books, you know that there's so much story, there's so many elements, there's so many characters to talk about, and trying to cram it all, it kind of loses some of the steam in some way, because some don't have enough time to shine, to give a lot of purpose or meaning or reason. Another character that I really enjoy in this season was Adar, the Lord Father of the Orcs. This is a new actor. The actor who portrayed Adar on the first season did not return, so we have now Sam Hazeldine, and he did a good job. I think he's a great on it. Now, this character is not in the books. You cannot find them in the books. It's not part of that, but it is presented that he is one of those elves in the First Age that was enslaved by Morgoth, who is technically the demon above Sauron, and he tortured and twisted their minds until they became the first orcs, and they are the fathers of the orcs. So of course, he has a motive. He wants to destroy Sauron because he has seen firsthand what Sauron wants to do. But at the same time, he is manipulated in many ways to what Sauron wants. But he's a great character. I think the only thing is that I'm giving you spoilers here. He was killed in the season. Unfortunately, you see his demise. But I think he sets a foundation that is important too, about, of course, this is the way Sauron takes control of the orcs. Also, Daniel Wayman portraying the stranger, and I'm gonna give you a big spoiler right now. He is actually Gandalf, and of course, you know, from the beginning of the show, we always knew that he was Gandalf. They didn't want to say that he was Gandalf, but all the things point out that he was who he was, and ultimately, at the end, he is the one. Also, the Dark Wizard. There's another counterpart there. There's so many strands going in so many different directions, with the orcs, with the elves, the dwarves, Numenor, definitely a big part, the humans being part of it. So there were a lot of different things, different elements, and trying to bring everything together, it can cause a lot to the story development, to the arc of each character, because there's so many characters, and you start thinking to yourself, who is actually the main character here? Because there's so many main characters, so many stories, all intertwined with each other. I think those who have read the books are the ones who are going to enjoy the most this series, because there's a lot of information here. There's a lot of Easter eggs. There's a lot, and of course they try to follow to the letter a lot of things. That doesn't mean that they don't take liberties. Now, the State of Talking decided for this to be family friendly, and in many ways Amazon has respected that. However, that doesn't mean that everything is family friendly. There are a lot of elements here that are darker in tone, and some people may find that, you know, disappointing if you are only familiar with The Hobbit. If you're only familiar with the Lord of the Rings movies, you know, also those have some dark elements. But if you're thinking that it's all about happy endings, you're mistaken big time. The reality is that if you get into the Middle Earth lore, you're gonna find that there's a lot of situations of darkness, but also a lot of sad moments. There's a lot of love stories for sure, but also a lot of dark elements in the story, a lot of sad endings. If you know J.r.r. Tolkien, do you realize that he was as a writer, he never wanted his books and his stories and mythology to be confused as super spiritual, over spiritualize them, as some people have done. It's not a religious text. It's never been, but he has elements there, of course, of good and evil versus evil. The good wins over all, regardless of the obstacles, always wins, but it doesn't mean that there is a price to be paid. There's always pain, and there's always suffering, and how the mortality of man, how men can pass, but how can men become important? There's a lot of elements in the Tolkien's work that you can tell about his own philosophy about the world, and I think in so many ways they're exploring that. But this season is a lot darker. I was disappointed because I was expecting more action here based on that trailer, thinking there will be more of those big battles of the Second Age. and they not necessarily have the scope or the scale that I wanted. I feel that at some point, and the cinematography is great. I think they did a good job with it. It's not, I would say, as comparable of what Peter Jackson did. I will tell you, although the series looks great on 4K, but at the end, the battle is just, it's a scuffle between a few. The scope and the scale is not that great. Even though you see this big amount of elves arriving at the end of the battle, you don't see that many bodies on the ground. So it's a lot of the times I feel like not everything was done to the proper scale. And there are also elements sometimes where I feel that the story didn't really tell a good story. When you see a character being hurt and all of a sudden you see it on the next scene unhurt, things like that. There are a lot of things where I think that they missed the point. All right, coming to the end of the video, now I'm gonna give you my final thoughts in the series, particularly the season 2. I would say clearly this is better than season 1. I wouldn't say that it's better by a large margin. It's a small margin, but it's enough to say that this is a better season. Yes, there is more exposition here. I was expecting more action, more battles. It didn't happen that way. So yes, you gotta go through the mud, through the exposition, but also this is how the foundation is being set about how Sauron became who he became, how he manipulated the Middle Earth, how everyone got into this big war in the Second Age, which leads to the, you know, the Third Age. So definitely there's a lot of elements here and that has been explored before briefly in some way in some other parts and also in the video games, but now we're able to see more. And this is the attempt to do it could be very massive. And yes, it's going to be a limitation based on what you're trying to do in film or on television. It's never going to be the same scope of the books. It's never going to be. So I will always recommend anyone, if you really want to be familiar with all of this and you want to really know, you need to read the books. The books are going to direct you in the right path. They're going to show you when you need to know, not all the different races and all the different groups and the people and where they come from, all the story, which is extensive. There are a lot of things that I did not like. So many different characters. You have to sacrifice some in order to make others shine, and that definitely affects some characters that are important. In this particular season, the Stranger, which is again is Gandalf, you know, he doesn't really get too much cameo, much time to shine, although some of the parts that he was there, you can see how he's becoming pretty much who he is going to be in the end. I like Nora. I think she's a great character with Poppy, you know, Proudfellow. Those are, I really enjoyed him. Not sure that they're gonna be part of season 3 because it seems that there is a, now they are diverging into different directions. We don't know what season 3 is going to be, but that leaves the door open for so much to happen. Of course, now Sauron in control of the orcs, how he's going to use that, how this is going to be manipulated. And my expectation for season 3 is to see the story of Numenor to be portrayed better, to see more of that development. So there are a lot of things that were good in the show. Some things that definitely make me smile so much. Balrog is one of them, seeing it in action. But there are a lot of things that still I would like to see on season 3. I would say if I have to give a score to this season, in my book, the score is 7.5 out of 10. 7.5, I would say season 1 was a 7, and still it could be better. I think there are a lot of things that I enjoy. There were lack of things that, again, that were not there. And some characters that were killed that actually I would have loved to see them more, but unfortunately we're not gonna have to see them anymore because now they're dead. But what is your opinion, my friends? What do you think about it? Have you enjoyed season 2? Have you watched it? You're not crazy about it? Let me know in the comments below. So once again, my friends, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, to comment, and to subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification button to remind you of the next video. Follow me on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. The links are in the description. And please consider supporting the channel financially through Patreon. My friends, God bless. Take care. I will talk to you again. Bye.